vote unless there's a tie. The Planning Commission, the chairman votes. BZA, the chairman votes. One thing that's a little, I'm not sure we're following this. We have been following this. I think if we're not following it, we need to either follow it or we need to amend the bylaws so it reads something different. But this is stating that if there is any dissenting vote, that the chairman calls for a roll call. So that's just something to think about. Record of proceeding, those are the same thing as minutes. Motions, this is an important section, in my opinion. Motions, Section 9. Following the closing of testimony, a motion may be made to recommend approval or denial of a proposition, to continue the proposition to a later date if a public hearing has occurred, or to table the item. Any stipulations relative to plans, development procedures, etc., should be listed following the motion to approve. Upon receiving a second, the motion may be discussed, and upon the call for question or at the discretion of the chairman, brought to a vote. A motion to amend, if necessary, must be voted on first. Then the main motion would be voted on in its amended state. Motion shall require an affirmative vote of the majority of the necessary quorum for passage. The chairman may not make or second motions, but he or she may vote on any and all motions to come before the commission. So is that crystal clear? Does anybody have any questions about that? Comments? Okay. Abstentions in Section 10. If a commissioner has a conflict of interest, he must vacate his chair and disqualify himself from voting on the item. If after considering an item, a commissioner merely wishes to abstain from voting, his abstention shall be treated as a vote with the majority. If there is a tie vote, an abstention shall be considered a denial. So that's a tricky one. Failure to recommend. Section 11. If there is a tie vote of the Planning Commission on any item on which the Commission sits as a recommending body, such as a rezoning or text amendment, such a tie vote is considered a failure to recommend and goes to the governing body with no recommendation. If the tie vote occurs on action which the Commission sits as a final decision maker, a tie vote defeats the motion. If no subsequent motion is made and approved after the tie vote, the request is deemed denied. A lot of detail here. Keep in mind some of these. I think when you come across some difficult situation voting, it's probably good just to ask and make sure we're following the bylaws. So you shouldn't expect that you're going to remember all of this. Know exactly what to do in every situation, but just keep in mind some of these real subtle differences that are very important. And one thing I didn't say is that this whole idea of fair due process, it's important that we follow the process and follow the bylaws in all of the ordinances, because if a case is decided and there is any question of whether the commission followed the rules that are laid out for your conduct or the ordinances, then that decision is vulnerable and could be remanded back for a reconsideration or worse. So it's very important to follow the process. If you do have questions, to ask. At the last meeting, there were some commissioners that were calling in by phone. They did not have equal access to information, so it was suggested that they not vote, and they did not vote because they didn't really have all the information in front of them. Okay. Next slide. Revote on the same item, Section 12. If for any reason a commissioner wishes to revote on an item previously considered during the current meeting agenda and voted upon by the Planning Commission, the chairman shall call for a revote on the item. Section 13, cross-communication. The restriction that's in this section, we discussed it internally, and our take on it was, staff's take on it was, is that it's intended to apply to the commission members and not to, say, members of the audience or even staff. Staff might want to confer on the side about an issue of procedure or something. We don't feel that it is intended to apply to that. It's really to apply to the commissioners. So commissioners shouldn't, when you're on the dais, you shouldn't talk to one another. The communication should be open. Okay, Article 6, conflict of interest. I think this was mentioned in another section of the bylaws. When a member of the commission feels he or she may have a conflict of interest on a particular case before the commission, he may so state for the record and vacate his or her chair. A member so vacating his or her chair should not participate in the hearing or discussion except at the invitation of the commission and shall not vote on the issue. If the vacation of a member due to conflict of interest will eliminate a quorum, then the planning commission shall continue the hearing to the next regular meeting. Suspension of rules. Any of these bylaws may be suspended for stated reasons by affirmative vote of a majority of those members present at a special or regular meeting with a quorum present. Amendment of rules. These bylaws may be amended or repealed for stated reasons by affirmative vote of a majority of the membership. So any questions, comments at this point? Okay. So now we're to the addendum. So I'm just going to touch on a couple things in here, or a few things in here. Staff presentation should be limited to no more than 10 minutes. If it's a very complex case or something, the chairman does have and the commission has the opportunity to grant staff more time. They can request more time. That would need to be voted on, I believe. No more than 15 minutes for the applicant presentation. Public comments limited to 3 minutes per individual. If there is an individual who is speaking for a number of people in the seats, representing multiple individuals, then they're allowed 7 minutes. For items requiring a public hearing, staff will create a sign-in sheet for members of the public wanting to comment. Okay. If I would have thought about this, I would have made multiple copies so these BZA members can see this, what I'm reading.
I have a real quick question.
Sure.
Sorry, before you go on.
Yeah.
The time limit, is there a time limit to what the actual commissioners can speak to any certain subject?
I see nothing in the bylaws that limits that. I think that's a matter of discretion of the commission in consideration of the what's going on and what.
So kind of up to the chair to.
I believe the
rein
chair.
in if it's getting a little long.
I'm glad you brought that up because the chair does have that ability to do that, and I think we can all speak longer than we even intended to speak. So I think that it's appropriate, and a member of the commission should not be offended if the chair states, "Hey, can you close up? You've made your point," or whatever. So I know there has been some public criticism that some of the meetings have lasted longer than they should have, that the commission belabored a point when they shouldn't have, and so that's something to keep in mind. So thank you for bringing that up. Okay, so just following the addendum, I guess it's part of the addendum, the general procedure for public hearings. What this says here is that the chairman, for a public hearing on one item, on a single item, the chairman reads the agenda item, the case number, title, request, and location. What it states here in this procedure is that staff introduces the item, then there's an applicant presentation, then there's a staff presentation, and then the planning commissioners ask specific questions of staff and the applicant. This has not been followed.